for a session presented by Sojern, please welcome the Director of Media Strategy and MarTech at Marriott International, Sofia Rovnova-Nixon, and Managing Director of Global Strategic Accounts and Partnerships at Sojern, Josh Beckwith, in discussion with Skift X Content Director, Alison McCarthy.
Hi Josh, hi Sofia, it's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for everyone for joining us. So there's been a lot of talk over the last few years about the increasing importance of first-party data in hospitality marketing. And this is mainly in response to things like new privacy regulations, the phasing out of third-party cookies, and just overall guest demand for more personalized messages and services. So Josh, you come from the digital marketing platform side of hospitality, where at Sojern you oversee the global strategic accounts team. So I'd love to just start off just by getting a quick overview of what first-party data is and why hotel marketers need to be thinking about it now.
Of course. So first-party data is the data that you, as an advertiser or as a client, own, right? It's the data that your customers give you through things like newsletter sign-ups, through bookings, through intent through your website, through loyalty, which we've heard about this morning as well. And for the longest time, the internet targeting has been based on what we consider third-party data, which is the aggregate of lots of other people's data stitched together to create a profile that you can then target. But increasingly, we're seeing that being eroded by the changes in digital media, and the importance of first-party data is just growing month over month right now. So we've heard today about CRMs, customer relationship managers. We've heard about loyalty schemes. We've heard about hyper-personalization. All of that is kind of tied together by this first-party data asset. And all of it's really important, right? When you look at consumer behavior, 80% of consumers are more likely to buy from you when there's a personalized service on offer. So our friends at Epsilon did this study, and they tell us the importance of that data to your ability to sell more effectively.
That 80% figure is huge, so it really does show the importance of personalization. And so, Sofia, you come from the media and MarTech side at Marriott. So someone who's overseen the implementation of a first-party data program, I'd love to hear about some of the upsides or opportunities that marketers gain by getting it right. And then I'd love to hear on the flip side, what are some of the challenges here?
Of course, so I think starting with the challenges and what we perceive the biggest challenge to be, and I'm sure it might resonate with a lot of people in the room here as well, is actually collecting the data and ensuring that you are so compliant with all of the restrictions and regulations. We value the privacy of our consumers, and we always want to be very in tune with what they are comfortable with in actually giving us in way of their information. And of course, being in the kind of global hospitality industry, a lot of our customers are based all over the world. So we need to be very mindful of what the restrictions and policies are in the areas where our consumers are based. And the second challenge I'd say to that is, once you've collected all your wonderful first-party data, is what do you do with it? How do you actually use it? How do you segment it? How do you get value out of it? Because just because you can measure something, it doesn't mean that it's actually going to be something that's useful to you. Mm-hmm. Your consumers might not see value in it, or you might not see scale in it. So those two being the challenges, which are very big challenges to overcome, so much more than what you can just summarize in these 2 points. But if you do get it right, the opportunity, on the other hand, is phenomenal. So, starting with, obviously, the main reason why we would do this in the first place, why we embark on this journey, is to really provide relevance to your consumers. Be there at the right time with the right message. And in turn, if you do this part right, the relevancy part right, what you stand to gain from it is personalized touch points all throughout your user journey, so not just in the marketing up front, but also actually when it comes to their digital experience with your website. As well as that, you are providing, you're building customer love and customer relationships through providing them with tailored messaging all throughout their experience with you as a brand. And again, if all of that is done right, what you stand to gain is, maximizing of your profits, because you'll actually be able to look after that consumer on a one-to-one basis, and you're really going to grow the way in which you can communicate with them and what you're able to tell them and what you're able to sell to them.
Great. So you did touch on privacy as one of the biggest challenges, and I do feel like that's kind of the elephant in the room when we talk about customer data. You know, there's regulations that are constantly evolving, and to make matters more complicated, different rules and regulations apply to different users depending on where they are in the world. I know just from traveling from New York to London for this event for this week, I've had to accept cookies over and over again. So yeah, Josh, I'd love to hear more about just how hotel marketers should be thinking about these privacy regulations. What should they keep in mind?
Sure. So obviously the privacy regulations are critically important to the use of first-party data. From a consumer point of view, 71% of consumers say that they're willing to share that data, but 68% of consumers are worried about the kind of processing of it. So the onus is on us as the marketers to make sure that when we're giving access to that valuable resource, that personal resource, that we're using it in a responsible and agreed upon framework that makes the consumer happy with the value exchange. So when it comes to privacy, obviously anyone in Europe would have been through GDPR a few years ago, which was a great learning curve, and we're now seeing that kind of spread across the US. It obviously started in California. There's now 5 states with legislature around privacy, and 21, I think, at current count, who currently have active bills looking into this. So really staying abreast of all of those different privacy regulations by market is really important. We talked about consent earlier this morning on the stage, and I think collecting consent and being transparent about the data use and what they're going to get from it, transferring that consent to your partners, so making sure that when someone's opted in, they understand who is going to be using that data and for what purpose. Then also giving the ability to exit, right? Opt out, profile deletion. So as long as you're talking through consent, you're working within the regulatory frameworks of the region, and you're being transparent with the customer, whether it's even something like a hashed email, which is becoming increasingly the identifier across digital marketing, which is your email, which is then hashed algorithmically so that you can't be recognized as yourself, but that email can be recognized within the ecosystem. Like, you can now collect that more personal identifier than perhaps a cookie ID, but you can do it through these frameworks that make you as an advertiser comfortable, but also your consumer comfortable that the data they're giving you access to is being used in an ethical manner.
So it sounds like it's all about putting those privacy controls in the hands of the consumer. Great. So switching gears here, Sofia, you oversee the first-party data program at Marriott. So I'd love to hear just more about, how you implemented that strategy, the thinking behind it, and then it'd be great if you could share a real-life success that came from it.
Yes, of course. I think what's really, really important to remember with first-party strategy is it really is a marathon, not a sprint. You are unlikely to ever go into, your first foray into using first-party data and audience segmentation and nail it absolutely spot on straight away. It's not going to happen. Well, at least it's not happened for me just yet. It's a long road to test and learn roadmaps, ensuring you have a very successful, North Star of what it is that you're ultimately trying to achieve, and the routes and iterations that you're going to take to get to this grand division ahead of you. Where we started from, and where I think is probably the most sensible part to start, is really understanding your consumer. So from all of these data points that we're able to collect, how can we group them together? How can we make them scalable? And how can we make them something that's important to our customers? I think we talked so much on stage already around personalization and what that means to our guests, and also all of the little breadcrumbs that our consumers leave us when they are, for example, staying in our hotels. I think we've had some really great examples from the Jumeirah group about how they do this, and it's probably a little bit we're more used to picking up on these cues in a face-to-face social circumstances as part of the hospitality industry and how we personalize our services on an everyday basis. But for us, consumer journey starts much, much sooner than the person actually visiting the hotel and walking through the front door. So it's picking up on their past booking behavior, how they interact with our marketing and advertising, how they interact with our member comms, what their loyalty status is like, combining all these different aspects into one holistic profile that is actually meaningful to us as a brand and what we can use to leverage this. So from the audience segmentation, then comes the deployment process, which again, it goes through many rounds of iteration to ensure that you have enough scale, that the audiences are responding well to the message that you're sending, and that we are not generalizing any of our audiences. We don't want to stereotype, we don't want to use generic demographics as something that we would pin any of our marketing comms towards. And then from that, we start to continuously do the feedback loop and learn from it. I think just recently, having run some of these new audience segments and new audience types, we have seen a 1.2 percentage point increase in our audiences being more likely to take an action, so to make a dated search or to view our property pages versus using generic in-market travel segments. And year on year, we are aiming to invest more and more of our money into first-party data. And of course, this goes to future-proofing us in a digital world against cookie deprecation and loss of that trackable identity.
Great. Well, I'd love to just end on a key takeaway for the audience. Sofia and Josh, what is one piece of advice you would give to hotel marketers who are interested in building a first-party data program?
My advice would be urgency. Start today if you haven't already. Go back, speak to legal, understand your consent, understand your data processing agreements. If you have a DPO, data processing officer. If you've already started, great, keep charging because the legislation tidal wave is only moving faster. So getting ahead of this is a great move for any business right now.
Great. Sofia?
Yeah, I'd say really get in there with your legal team, be their best friend, because it is going to be a partnership and a work of love between the two departments. But ultimately, I would say it's start with your customer mind first with everything that you do. If it's not offering relevance to your customer, if it's not offering value to your customer, then rethink. You don't have to do it if you're not going to make your customer's life better.
Great. Well, the time to start is now, and put your customer first. I think that's a great way to end it. Sofia and Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you want to learn more about how hotel marketers are thinking about first-party data, you can download Sojern's report at sojern.com/signup/skift or scan the QR code. Thank you.